is Nadine, and welcome to Hop Along Studio. Today I want to talk a little bit about drawing and even just the process of learning new skills. If you've ever been intimidated by drawing or you haven't drawn since you were a child, sometimes as an adult learning how to draw can be super intimidating and super challenging. And that has more to do with the fact that we have some preconceived notions about what drawing should be and how easy it should come. I had to deal with this myself recently because I was learning how to draw from an online course. So you may have told yourself in the past, I can't draw. And that's something that I have said to myself so often over the last years, especially as I was trying to learn how to draw and I was comparing my drawing to others. I felt like my drawings didn't compare, and this is a skill that I would probably never learn. And that limiting belief stuck with me for a very long time until really earlier this year. I finally buckled down and took a drawing course from one of my favorite YouTubers, Ian Roberts. And his course was specifically about drawing relating to painting and how painting and drawing are not that different. And I was intrigued. How could it be that you can move from a line drawing to a painting and actually have it make sense? And so I took this course about 6 weeks ago and I was blown away about the results that I got. I've been messing up with drawing a little bit over the last few years. I've done a couple of YouTube videos about it, but I never felt really confident in drawing. And after the 6-week course, I feel like I can draw with confidence. I can relate this to my painting. And there's a few really key things I learned through the process of this course. And one of those things was accountability and community is so important when you're learning drawing skills. Whether or not you're part of a Facebook group, whether or not you have some friends around you that are working through the same process as you are, it is really important to have community. One of the best parts about this drawing course, it wasn't an online drawing course that you sign up for, you're on your own, and maybe you send an email to an instructor if you run into issues. This was a drawing course that had 7 Zoom calls and also had a community component where we were broken into groups and we did critiques for each other and we critiqued other people's drawings as well. And that whole process of critiquing and taking positive feedback, but also ways you could improve, was huge for me for improving my drawing skills. And even more importantly, even though there was a lot of content, I ended up doing quite a few drawings every week. I averaged between 3 and 4 drawings a week because I had something that I wanted to show other people. I also really wanted those critiques. So that whole community aspect of having people talk about your work, you talking about others' work, and just sharing your work with others and getting that feedback was a huge step forward for me in my drawing practice. It really also helped me change my perspective towards my drawing ability. When I had people making comments on my drawings and going, I wish I could draw as well as you, I thought, me? Why would you want to draw anything like me? I don't know how to draw. And so that limiting belief of, oh, I can't draw, and even as I was working through that course, having that in the back of my mind, trying to hold me back, having people go, wow, I wish I had such nice marks as you. Oh, I love your shading. I had to really change my perspective on how I looked at my own work. And so often we look at our work through the eye of judgment. And instead of seeing the really excellent things about our work, yes, there's always areas to improve, but I really had to go from a place of I don't know how to draw to I know how to draw. I maybe don't know how to draw as well as someone who's been doing it for 30 years, but I do know how to draw. And I know how to break down shapes, and I know how to figure this out. And that for me was a huge move forward in my drawing practice, where I felt like I could even share this video with you because I was in a place where I felt confident enough to share about this experience and what I've learned about myself. And a huge part of this course was building skills. We talked about the idea of craft, about the idea of practice and doing the same thing over and over again to get your brain and your hand working together. The idea that this would take time, and that was the hardest part for me. It was trying not to rush through. And it was taking the time to try to have even masses of strokes so that something looked like a shape. And that for me was so challenging because I wanted to rush through. I actually started listening to music, listening to podcasts, finding ways to just distract my mind that I would stay in the moment and find that mindfulness through that creative process. And it's really great mindfulness practice, the idea of learning how to draw, because you have to analyze, you need to add in your lines, you need to add in your shapes, you need to add in your shading, and you need to be present in that. And there is no rushing through that process. And that for me was a huge part of learning to slow down. And realizing too that the more time I spend on these thumbnail drawings, the better the paintings that I will eventually make will be, because I have confidence in what I'm doing. I felt this was a huge takeaway for me, that drawing takes practice. It takes time. And it sometimes is frustrating, and sometimes it doesn't come easy, and sometimes I just want to erase it all and start again. And that's okay. It's really important that we take that time to learn those skills, to build on those skills. And that's how we will really be successful in our drawing practice. So now I want to take you to my art space and share with you 3 techniques that I learned from this class. And these were pivotal ones that completely changed how I view drawing. So one of the most valuable things I learned from this course was the importance of gridding every single drawing. You'll notice on this drawing here, I've added a rule of thirds grid, and that's generally what we did through most of this course. I've also done grids in the past through my composition video, where if you struggle with just using the rule of thirds lines, you can add some additional lines in a grid to help you get your shape. And when you also use this on your reference photo, it makes it very easy to draw in your subjects in the correct perspective. One thing I've seen from grid drawing is that what I think is perspective isn't always in perspective. And so by having these rule of thirds line and the grid, it really helps you to make sure that your composition is actually true to life. I have gridded drawings in the past, but one thing I didn't do was do it consistently. And that was one thing I really picked from this course, was that every photo was gridded. Every photo, you start with your grid by drawing your grid in based off of the size of your photo. So whether it's a 4x6, a 5x7, whatever those dimensions are, and then figuring out what your rule of thirds grid on that would be. And thankfully, because I have a photo editing program, it was very easy to use the rule of thirds grid on my reference photo and make it very easy for me to grid most of my photos. There's a variety of apps out there that will also give you the rule of thirds grid or any grid size that you're looking for, and most of them are free. So you want to start with your grid, and then you want to add in your line drawing. And then once you're done with your line drawing, then you want to start removing these lines. It's important to remove the lines so that it doesn't take away from your final picture. I would suggest putting them in quite lightly, just so that they are very easy to erase. And sometimes you won't be able to remove all the lines. In this example, this is one that I recently did, and you can still see some of these rule of thirds lines, but I'm not too worried about it because I'm going to be adding in shading, I'm going to be adding in different values, and in the end, you're not going to be able to see them at all. If you want to add your rule of thirds grid to your canvas, I would suggest using these Caran Neocolor 2 watercolor crayons. What I really like about these crayons is you can get a really strong line for the grid. But what's wonderful about it is because they are watercolor, by adding water to a paintbrush or just adding acrylic paint over top of the grid, it will pretty much disappear as you paint. And so it's a really great way of getting in that grid but not having to worry about seeing those grid lines later. So one thing I really improved on during this course was my ability to simplify a drawing. I would generally look at a photo like this and go, I need to put in every rock, I need to put in every little bit of gravel, I need to add every single log that's floating in the water, and I would get so bogged down in the details that I would generally just put down my pencil and walk away because I found it too overwhelming. And so this is a picture that I drew last week, and you'll notice that I have been able to simplify some things. I looked at the things in the water and said, no, that's too complex, so I just removed them overall. I probably actually put a little too much detail into those back rocks. I think probably if I did this photo again, I would even simplify that more. But you can see that I brought in some of the larger rocks, and I've kind of left everything else. And that's where gradations really come in handy, because they fill in the space. You give the eye the idea that this is ground. There are things going on there, but you don't need to draw in every rock and every small thing to get that sense of depth and distance and that there's something going on there. And this is also where creative license comes in, because again, there's more detail in here in the background, but because it's further out, I added in some details and left a lot of it just more shapes and straight gradations. Artistic license also allows me to add in a sky. I pulled the sky from a different picture because this is not a very interesting sky. When I took this picture, we were actually having a lot of forest fires, so we weren't getting clear skies and big billowy clouds. We were getting a very overcast, foggy, smoggy look to the sky. So I added in some clouds. I thought it made for a much more interesting picture. And so you can see by just making some changes and making those decisions, it's very easy to simplify. And by sticking to the idea of shapes, that can help you from getting really bogged down in all the details of a picture. So I also want to discuss the idea of a line drawing versus a value drawing. And so with a line drawing, you might have something like a circle, and that's your line drawing, and that's all that you do. But when you make it a value drawing, this is where you start adding in your shading. And you look at the shape and figure out what kind of marks do you want to add. And also, what's in the background? Is this circle sitting on a surface? And does that surface have light? Do we have shadows? And if we have shadows in places like this, that also changes where the light's hitting. So in this area here, we're going to have things be quite a bit darker than this lighter area there. And that can also show up in the shadows. And so this for me was a big aha moment, because when I was learning to draw, and I was always going, well, how does a line drawing, besides giving you the general shape you'd want on your canvas, how does that relate to painting? And how do I make this work for me? And by learning how to do value shapes like this, I can look at it and go, okay, well, here's my shape of shadow. And then I'm going to go a little bit lighter here. And so this is showing where that shape is changing. And then because it is a circular object, now I want to start bringing in marks that bring a bit of curve to it. And so you can see from here, just by doing this, this moves it from just being a line drawing that has no context to something that has more of a shape that you could draw or paint. And this for me was a huge change in just how I draw and how I view drawing in general. So instead of being something that is not related at all to painting, instead it is something that basically is the start of my painting. I start with a drawing, and then from there I will do a smaller painting sketch, and then at that point, if I still love the image, then it goes onto a canvas. So what I loved about this course is that I went from doing extremely simple gradations to doing very boxy, simple shapes. And so what I love about it is I went from these more simple shapes that have more value-based to actually getting into proper shapes. These are trees, these are cypress bushes, there's shadows, there's depth in the picture plane, and there's things that you can see that draw your eye through the picture. And then from there, I did these few a week ago, and this one is on toned paper, and this one's on white paper. And you can see that from where I started 6 weeks ago, where I was just doing gradations, to this. That's a long way to come in a 6-week period of time. But a lot of that was through practice. It was through a class that forced a lot of accountability and community. And I just loved that I saw such great progress in such a short period of time. And so I just wanted to share with you my experience with this, because I thought it was so valuable just to show you like how far you can come if you have the right information, if you're willing to apply some knowledge and just really work at it. And so if you've ever felt like you can't draw, don't let that stop you. There's so many ways that you can learn how to draw and feel confident in your ability to draw, and maybe even transfer that to your paintings. So I hope that these 3 ideas plus the before and after pictures gives you some inspiration of where you can go with your drawing practice. And I really enjoyed Ian Roberts' course, and I do really think that it's one that everyone should take. I'm not affiliated with him. He doesn't actually know that I'm doing this video at all. For me, it was such a positive learning experience, and he is such a great teacher that I just really wanted to do a shout out to him to say thank you for his hard work in that course, because it helped me so much. So I hope this has given you some ideas on where to start with working through your drawing skills, that this has inspired you to maybe get past some of those limiting beliefs that you have about art or about your own artistic practice and creativity. We need to be kind to ourselves. I know that's something that I'm working on a lot lately. It is so easy to judge our work. It's so easy to judge our talent. But I believe that if we just give ourselves that space to try, that space to just reach out, work on a skill, and not judge it, it's amazing where we can end up. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, if you could like it, subscribe, and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on any future videos. I would also love to see your comments and hear what you have to say about this video, about where you are at in your drawing practice, or anything about your creative practice. I would love to hear your comments and start a conversation with you. So I hope you have a really great week, that you take some time for some personal self-care, and I will see you next time.